Dr. Mithika Mwenda. Let's put our hands together for Mithika.
Thank you, CS. Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, the Deputy President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, respected guests, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to stand by existing protocols. It is with great honor that I address you today, first, as the Executive Director of the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance, representing the African civil society, and secondly, wearing the hat of the larger non-state actors steering committee for the African Climate Summit, which has been meeting since the announcement by Kenya of hosting this all-important summit in February this year. As we gather here in Nairobi for this inaugural Africa Climate Summit, I can't help but feel the weight of the challenges and the opportunities that lie ahead. For many years, the climate change negotiations under the UNFCCC have remained a contestation between North and South, with deepening mistrust and a widening divide between North and South about two actions that should reverse the impacts of the challenge that poses existential threat to the survival of humanity and the planet, that is, adaptation and mitigation. The outcome of this summit, then, should seek to not only provide a neutral ground for conversation and restore hope and dignity for millions of people whose livelihoods have been turned upside down due to the ranging climate impacts manifested by shifting seasons, drying rivers, erratic rainfall, diseases, compounding food crisis, and forced solutions, but should also be responsive to African people's realities, aspirations, desires, and imperatives of climate justice. Top of these should be adaptation, underpinned by the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities. It is not just about coping with the impacts of climate change, but also about enhancing our solidarity in prosperity, resilience, reducing our risk, and seizing the opportunities which are coming with this challenge. Yes, Africa, with the most progressive position in international dialogue on climate change, has pronounced itself on what we require in adaptation and mitigation. And all standards show that we are doing more than our fair share in the global efforts to combat this crisis. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Africa needs between 160 to 340 billion US dollars by 2030 for adaptation, while the current flows are only around 16 billion annually, a fraction of a budget for a blue chip company and foundations attending this summit. We need a deep conversation on how to address this, including achieving the balanced financing between adaptation and mitigation, as delaying action now will result in exponential costs in the future. This summit should also convey a bold, unequivocal message from Africa that it is not a forum to end the industrialized countries, to escape their historical responsibilities, and transfer the burden of action to the victims of their actions, but a platform to once again renew our call to honor their commitments on deep and genuine emission reduction, adequate support to vulnerable, and support the communities at the front line of climate crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, We want to extend a hand of partnership and take front seat in the inevitable transition to low-carbon, climate-resilient, fair, equitable, and ecologically just development pathways. We should also seek to change the narratives, and I think I have heard His Excellency President speaking about that every time. And we need also reciprocal actions from our partners in the North and urge them not to shift the goalpost like they have done before. I hope, Your Excellency, you will agree with me that we are doing so much, but there is a problem. We have the critical natural resources, for instance, including vast mineral resources, cobalt, lithium, and all others, which will drive this transition. How to exploit these resources, then, should be the conversation we should have. How we leverage them will determine whether we repeat the curse of the minerals driving the carbon-addicted industrial revolution, that is through fossil fuels, which has brought us the current challenges we have. Or we will choose to start with an opportunity to shape our future through a resilient, prosperous, inclusive, and fair way. This is really our time. And thank you again, Your Excellency. When we were in South Africa during the African Parliamentarian Summit on Climate Policy and Equity, I told you, you are our general. And I told you, now below there, you have a soldier. Let us work together, and we promise our commitment to that process. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Mithika, for speaking on behalf of the civil society. Now, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we move on, noting that the vital agenda pursued this week, the ACS will play a crucial part in the global fight against climate change and have a massive impact in the upcoming global initiatives around climate action. And one of these is the COP28. And Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are aware that during this summit, we have the African Climate Week convened by the UNFCCC as part of the regional climate weeks, again, that build momentum for COP28. And we have here with us none other than the Executive Director of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, Simon Steele. Let us put our hands together to have the statements from Simon. Welcome, Simon.
Excellencies, ministers, colleagues, friends, I'm honored to be here at the Africa Climate Summit and the first of 4 regional climate weeks of 2023. I want to thank the Kenyan government and personally President Ruto for his leadership and vision in bringing us here together. And I want special recognition for Minister Soipan Tuya for her work and efforts in helping to organize both the summit and the climate weeks. This summit for Africa, by Africa, will help us tackle the climate crisis we see and feel all around the world. I speak to you today not just as the head of the UNFCCC, but as the former minister from a developing country. So let us talk about what we can do to stabilize the climate and build resilient societies in Africa and throughout the world. Development is, as it should be, a priority. I know personally the destruction that climate-related disasters can wreak on years of development. But the world is asking for a lot. Develop, but don't do it in the carbon-intensive way that we did in the past. Therefore, it is a global responsibility to collectively work out how we do that. Every day this week, we'll be putting our heads together to discuss how to build resilience to climate risks, transition to a low-emission economy, and collaborate on solutions, transforming our economies through a just transition that benefits all sectors of society. Africa, the equal partner in this endeavor, is offering its huge potential. We already know innovation in Africa is astounding. So how can we accelerate this development through green technology and energy? And in doing so, taking the necessary actions to keep in 1.5 within reach.
There are live pictures in the KICC International Convention Center as the Africa Climate Summit and the Africa Climate Week has just begun. This are early speeches there. We definitely have seen President William Ruto as well as the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua among other African dignitaries and cabinet secretaries and the African delegates as well. And you can definitely see there the theme, driving green growth and climate finance solutions for Africa and the world. This is one major talking point, matters finance solutions, that will be today, even ahead of the COP28. But Fred, we're going to wrap it up.
Yes, even as we wrap up, interesting videos online of the president driving in that yellow car again today with a very small entourage from State House on his way to the African Climate Summit. And yes, this will be the biggest talking point. We want to take you back to the KICC for the main event, where we do expect the president to preside over the official opening of that summit. So from our end, I don't think we have anything more to add. My name is Freddie Ndimuli. This has been Morning Cafe. Let's do this again tomorrow morning. Have a nice day.
And I'm yours truly, Stanley Nyerungeta. Remember, the conversation continues online. We're asking you, well, apart from the whole economic vantage points that this particular summit brings on, what else do you think, what tangible things will actually come out of this particular summit? This particular conversation continues even in our subsequent bulletins. But then from us right here on Morning Cafe, we definitely have to wrap it up. I'm yours truly, Stanley Nyerungeta. Tomorrow, 6 a.m. Goodbye.
I also committed to maximizing the opportunities available to us to build collaboration throughout the year between COPs. This Africa Climate Week is a good example on delivering just that. In the past, we used to have only 3 to 4 mandated events associated with the regional climate weeks. Now there are 20. We've been working to cluster them, not just for efficient and resource saving's sake, but also because it is here, in the regions, where catalytic connections are made, and we can supercharge action on the ground. I want to see Africa Climate Week usher in climate action in 3 pivotal fronts. First, it must enable governments to amplify their contributions and commitments. Second, strengthen regional bonds and collaboration. And third, and perhaps most profoundly, empower local transformation so that African nations can come to COP28, which is less than 100 days away, in leading action and ambition. At COP28, the first global stocktake will review our progress on climate action. We know we are not on track. Our response to those findings is a key opportunity to course correct towards a sustainable future. In addition, we must respond to those impacts we know cannot be averted through our approach to loss and damage and the operationalization of the fund and funding arrangements at COP28. The discussions taking place here will inform the global stocktake about the challenges, barriers, and opportunities for climate action and support within the context of Africa. The UNFCCC Secretariat can work with you to identify the opportunities for Africa and facilitate the solutions and to attain those opportunities. Excellencies, ministers, the world is counting on your continued collaboration and leadership. I thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Next, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, is my turn to introduce Her Excellency Josepha Sako, who is the African Union Commissioner in charge of agriculture, rural development, blue economy, and sustainable development. Welcome, my sister. You have been extremely instrumental in helping us co-host this summit.
Thank you, Cabinet Minister, to give me the floor. Good morning, every one of you. Let me acknowledge the presence of His Excellency, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, the President of the Republic of Kenya and coordinator of the Committee of Head of State and Government on Climate Change of African Union, His Excellency Azali Assoumani, the President of the Union of Comoros and current African Union Chairperson, His Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, the Excellencies Head of States and Government from Africa and abroad, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, UN Secretary General, if he's present, His Excellency Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, honorable ministers present, executive head of international organizations, representative of the civil organization, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol duly observed. On behalf of the African Union Commission, I am pleased to welcome you all to the African Climate Summit and to thank all delegates from Africa and the world at large for setting time aside of your busy schedule to participate at this inaugural African Climate Summit. You are welcome. Karibu. Sejam bem-vindos. Vous êtes le bienvenu. Merci. Your participation is a clear demonstration of our unwavering commitment to collectively shape the future of climate change, climate action in Africa and across the world. We are not isolated. We are following the global agenda. Although we are not the polluters, our responsibility is just 4%, but we cannot isolate because the climate issue, it's really affecting all of us globally, the planet, and we need a sound planet for the next generation. That's why in the continent we are fully committed in this agenda, and I really commend President Ruto for his commitment on this climate agenda. Congratulations, Excellency President. Let me also like to acknowledge the presence of former Prime Minister of Ethiopia, His Excellency Prime Minister of Ethiopia. You're welcome to this meeting. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to express our sincere gratitude to the government and people of Kenya for the warm reception and hospitality accorded to all the delegation since their arrival in this beautiful city of Nairobi. I would also like to commend the organizers from the different ministries and partners organizations under the leadership and strategic guidance of His Excellency Dr. William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, that worked around the clock on the technical and logistical arrangement required for a successful summit. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would like to submit to you that climate change is a pandemic in Africa and is responsible for more lives and economic distress. Climate change is resulting in an increased frequency and intensity of extreme weather events that causes disasters with compounding effects because they do not allow us to recover before another disaster strikes again. What are we witnessing is the situation thereby governments are abandoning development and concentrating their resources in responding to climate-related disaster without building resilience. We know that many African governments, they are using at least 2% of their budget to invest on the disasters, on adaptation programs in the continent. In our continent, research tells us that some of the African member states are spending up to 50% of their GDP per year in response to climate-induced disasters. The economic losses resulting from climate change stand at more than 5% of the annual GDP for the continent. The bottom line is that the cost of climate change in Africa is too high for us. We know for sure that crying for the promised resources by the developed countries' parties has not yielded tangible results, and even the $100 billion that you promised during the during the Paris Agreement, COP21, up to now, we haven't seen anything. We haven't seen anything. That was the pledge in 2009 to be accessible from 2022. We are in 2023. We haven't seen anything. Please, partners, come and honor your pledge. Has not been reached to Africa. This is despite being their obligation due to their historic responsibility for climate change in line with the Convention and the Paris Agreement. We also know that the cost of addressing climate change is also skyrocketing. For example, the revise of our NDCs for Africa will require an estimated $3 trillion of investment, US dollar investment, to implement, in addition to all the climate action, including NAPS. Africa has refused to wait and die due to climate change. We shall continue to pursue them to honor their obligation, but at the same time, we shall proceed with our own initiatives aimed at building resilience in Africa. I must confess that at African Union Commission, we are enjoying support for some of our development partners, and so are some of the member states. However, Africa needs to move from a donor-recipient relationship to that built around investment, as that it is the pathway to reaping development aspiration of our continent, the Africa we all want. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the primary goal of this summit is to propel our collective efforts on climate change and sustainable development forward. The fundamental driver of success for African green transition will be the availability of resources for investment, and these must be accompanied by the strengthening of the ability of the African countries to mobilize their own resources, their own domestic resources. And I believe in Africa we can do it. We have the resources. Let us start allocating the resources on the environmental agenda when we are doing our national budget. I believe that we have this capacity. So the fundamental driver of this success, as I say, for African green transition will be the availability of resources for investment, and those must be accompanied by strengthening of the ability of the African country to mobilize our own resources, build on the foundation of solid and inclusive economic growth. As a continent, previous growth models have been predicated largely on the sheep production and export of African raw material with a minimal value addition. We have to start adding value and create jobs for our youth and our women. A continuation of this trajectory will undoubtedly reinforce Africa's vulnerability. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, the African continent remains a key player in charting the way forward towards a low-carbon future, despite being the least contributor and yet highly vulnerable to the impact of climate change. However, our strength lies in our unity and the fact that we are a continent that is vibrant, fast-growing, useful, young population, energy, and diversity. Our solution for African climate change are rooted in large-scale investment in climate resilience centered on energy access to drive sustainable industrialization. This represents one of the fastest drivers for poverty reduction, while also fundamentally changing the nature of Africa's economic model with large-scale investment in a sustainable value chain. To this end, we continue to put policy framework in place to support the implementation of climate action. Such frameworks include the African Union Climate Change and Resilience Development Strategy and Action Plan. This was adopted by our head of state. We are not here to invent the wheel. The wheel exists. If you want to partner with us, this is what our head of state adopted, and I invite partners to really align any investment in Africa with these important strategic action on climate change. We didn't have it, but we support of some partners, even the EU, we were able to elaborate and approve it. So I call upon all the partners and our member states to align on this so that we are not trying to multiplicate or duplicate what already exists in the continent. The second strategy, it is the Continental Green Recovery Action Plan and the integrated and the integrated strategy on meteorology. So all these instruments are strategic and they exist. So if at all we want to tackle all the issues of the challenges of climate change, the tools are there. I'm just inviting investment. Let us find a mechanism where our member state can have access to these capitals, financing resources, so that we can go ahead. We have already done our homework with these tools that was approved. As I conclude, I would like to emphasize the following, that Africa's potential is fostering its sustainable development. Its great green transformation must be designed and led by African countries and African institutions, and should be centered on the mobilization of new and additional resources that can be deployed urgently. 2, that Africa's energy transition must be defined. My colleague is here. She's going to share with us how is she doing as a commissioner of this important department, with the Department of Infrastructure. Honed and led by African for it to be just and equitable. 3, we need to structurally alter the relationship of African economy within the global economy and reduce the impact of exogenous shocks by building sustainable value chain. This will allow a focus on people and on ensuring the connection between the citizens of Africa and its immense natural health. In this process, we are determined not to be bystander in this, but to lead by doing. Nevertheless, as a continent, we will continue to hold our partners accountable to the promise they made to us. 4, together we aim to elevate the discourse surrounding climate change and realize support for a financial architecture specifically tailored by Africa, while also emphasizing our continent's abundant resources and resilience as we accelerate our transition towards a climate resilient future. 5th, as this green transformation is built on this shared determination, I urge us to strongly embrace our collective strengths towards this cause. This summit will be just one step of many towards attaining our objective, which is our Agenda 2063. 6, and lastly, we will count on the support of partners present here today, as well all relevant stakeholders, to support the implementation of the summit's outcome. As the African Union Commission, we remain determined and committed to work with member states in addressing climate change, including the implementation of the outcome of this summit, which is the Nairobi Declaration. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your attention and look forward for a fruitful deliberation. Asante sana, muito obrigada, muitas gracias, merci beaucoup, shukran.
Good job, Your Excellency, with the Swahili. Your Excellency, colleague ministers, ladies and gentlemen, we are at the apex of the opening session of today's ministerial segment of the Africa Climate Summit. And Excellencies, allow me to remind my colleague ministers that we have a very busy day ahead of us. As per the program, we have 3 breakaway rooms, Lenana, Savo, Abadeas, and we shall be guided through that section immediately after the official opening. Allow me, Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Kenya, to thank you most profusely for accepting to grace this ministerial segment to flag us off to a very busy day. And without much ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together to welcome His Excellency President William Ruto to make his remarks. Thank you, Excellency.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's take our seats. Thank you very much. Excellencies, honorable ministers, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to Nairobi. It's called the Green City in the Sun. Welcome to Kenya and welcome to the Africa Climate Summit. I have welcomed you to this great city on behalf of the people and government of Kenya to this meeting that is co-hosted by the Africa Union and the government of Kenya. Let me give you a bit of information that will make it easy to find your way around. Nairobi is a very interesting city. On one side, there's a full canopy forest. And on the other side, we have a wildlife national park. We keep the wildlife in the park because we have a fence. But sometimes, as nature would be, they break away from the fence. So while you are doing your morning walk, you might encounter a lion. Please be careful. It is not tamed, it is wild. Let me also inform you that Nairobi is the home of the United Nations Environmental Programme, the only UN agency headquarters in the global south. So, discussing matters environment, you are in the correct city. And if you need any referencing, the UNEP is right here. Let me also volunteer some additional information that Kenya, a few kilometers from where you are seated, scientists, including myself as a scientist, discovered and located the earliest remains of man on Earth. In other words, this is where humanity began. Before you guys went all over the place, in Europe and America and Asia and the rest of our continent, this is where we all began. And therefore, allow me to welcome you home. And in a few months, we are having a conversation as Kenyans. In a few months, we are seriously considering abolishing any visa requirement because it is unfair to ask anybody coming home for visa. I welcome all the delegates who responded positively to Africa's call to gather at this inaugural Africa Summit. In order for us to imagine, design, and then build a future of prosperity for Africa and the world, you have just stepped into, let me take that again. You have not just stepped into a conference hall. You have entered the future, a future ripe with potential, driven by global partnerships committed to African prosperity, inclusive growth, and a livable planet for all of us. Clearly, therefore, this is no ordinary summit. We are not here just to talk about Africa or climate change in the usual way, which often accentuates our divisions. You all remember the North versus South, developed versus developing, polluters versus victims, and the whole of that conversation. And even within our own government, sometimes we have conversations around economic development, so badly needed for us to achieve stable and dignified livelihoods, and is often cast as a trade-off with environmental stewardship as if they are mutually exclusive, when in actual fact they are positively reinforcing. Let me be clear. These conversations are necessary. Africa's carbon footprint remains small, but the human toll of climate change is disproportionately high. The urgency to address loss and damage and to configure appropriate financial mechanisms for resilience grows with each extreme weather event and each bout of climate-induced insecurity. A complex interplay of needs and responsibilities is a daily challenge, but it should not lead to a deadlock. We must be alert to the fact that they can sometimes blind us to the bigger picture. Delivering prosperity and well-being for Africa's growing population without pushing the world deeper into climate disaster is not just an abstract proposition or a mere wishful thinking. It is a real possibility proven by science and affirmed by emerging experience. An opportunity-oriented focus on climate action is the engine for propelling Africa into a realm of stability and prosperity, elevating us to middle-income status and beyond. This context is precisely what sets this climate summit apart from others. It aims to unite us across neighborhoods, across sectors, across institutions, local or international, across country borders, across continents, and across generations. It is because we all have a shared stake in the Earth's ability to sustain life that we must envision together a future that embraces the values of equality, human security, and shared prosperity. Africa possesses all the necessary conditions to realize this future. Our foremost asset is our young and growing young people and workforce, educated, skilled, and motivated to pursue industry, innovation, and enterprise. And we saw them here speak ably this morning. And I congratulate the young people who've been here for the last 3 days, and they have done a tremendous job in the Youth Summit. We have ample renewable energy potential as well, and the natural assets and resources to green our own consumption, but also to meaningfully contribute to decarbonization of the global economy. We must see in green growth not just a climate imperative, but also a fountain of multi-billion-dollar economic opportunities that Africa and the world is primed to capitalize. We are brought together by a clear understanding and deep concern about the inadequacy of our present means in terms of institutions and available finances to deal effectively with the magnitude of our collective threats and challenges. But we will not shy away from the difficult conversations and uncomfortable realities that must be addressed to achieve meaningful change. Policy, regulations, taxation, trade, and climate justice will all be scrutinized in national, regional, global contexts. Yet, the way we frame these discussions matters. I invite all of us to adopt opportunity lens as we navigate these complex dialogues. For a very long time, we have looked at this as a problem. It is time we flipped and looked at it from the other side. There are opportunities, immense opportunities as well. And that is why we are not here to catalog grievances and list problems. We are here to scrutinize ideas, assess perspectives, so that we can unlock solutions. The very format of this summit has been designed to facilitate such engagement. Over the next 3 days, be ready to be challenged in this dynamic ecosystem of dialogue and discovery. African and global leaders, innovation trailblazers, experts, investors, and captains of industry are here to explore the opportunities, tackle the barriers, and scale up solutions. While I cannot encapsulate the breadth and depth of all our program within my opening remarks, allow me to outline the overarching theme, which is the unparalleled opportunity that climate action represents for Africa. As you're aware, the climate conversation began 31 years ago in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro. But this is the first African summit 31 years later. When my colleagues agreed, in the Africa Union that is, agreed to my offer to host this climate summit, it was clear to me that this inaugural summit is going to be the stepping stone to the ultimate resolution of this challenge. The reason why possibly we haven't made much progress is because Africa had not consolidated and assembled its ideas and brought them to the table. I am confident that now going forward, we have all what it takes to create a win-win outcome out of this very intense conversation about climate change. This occasion summons us to contemplate the full range of possibilities that can be unleashed by directing investment and appropriate technology to actualize our continent's abundant resource endowments. Let us look, for example, at food production and the protection and expansion of our invaluable natural carbon sinks, which stand at the intersection of our environment and ecology on one end, and economic opportunities on the other end. Since 1961, Africa has witnessed a 1/3 reduction in agricultural productivity due to climate change, a stark reminder of the urgent need for adaptation. Yet, much of the world is just waking up to the merits of restorative agriculture, a practice that already resonates with African farming practices, enhanced by building on the wealth of indigenous knowledge systems. We can scale. This enables enhance and even monetize potential in our agricultural land assets. This enables us 2/3 to unlock the huge potential in uncultivated, underutilized, arable land to feed our growing populations, and to do so in harmony with our invaluable natural carbon sinks. Additionally, the restoration and expansion of Africa's natural carbon sinks are not just an environmental imperative. In fact, they are an unparalleled economic gold mine. They have the potential to absorb millions of tons of CO2 annually, which should translate into billions of dollars if we were living in a fair world, improve livelihoods, and millions of opportunities across this continent. And I was having a conversation yesterday about a banker of one of the big multinational banks. And he was telling me about Africa's GDP. And GDP is about assets. It's about what you have. We have the carbon sinks that serves the world, cleans our environment, acts as sequestration of carbon that is produced by others. But we get nothing for it. It's not anywhere in our balance sheet. Everybody's assets are in their balance sheet. Some of ours are not in that balance sheet. The day we put our whole assets in our balance sheet, you will know that we are a very wealthy continent. And let me say, we do all that, but it doesn't count for much. But we do it anyway because we love this world, because it's our home. And that is why the conversation of North versus South must come to an end. Who did what? It's not a conversation that we have the luxury to engage in. Because when the apocalypse happens, it will happen for all of us, for the entire humanity. Let me say this. We do this, and all of this comes while safeguarding our biodiversity. We are careful to make sure that that's in place. Our renewable energy resources are not just environmental necessity. They are the ultimate catalyst of radical socio-economic prosperity. They can fuel sustainable development, drive economic growth, create jobs, and also uplift millions from energy poverty, all while reducing our carbon footprint continentally and globally. The possibilities are not just promising, they are transformative. Africa can power all our energy needs with renewable resources. The continent has enough potential to be entirely self-sufficient with the mixture of wind, solar, geothermal, sustainable biomass, and hydropower. In Africa, we can be a green industrial hub that helps other regions achieve their net zero strategies by 2050. In other words, what I'm saying is unlocking the renewable resources that we have in our continent is not only good for Africa, it is good for the rest of the world. Because we not only are driving our own growth, but we are ready to share these resources with the rest of the world. And by doing so, we will assist the rest of the world in ensuring that we move towards the net zero target that we all set for ourselves. And for Africa, renewable resources, it is not just the volume, but also the non-seasonality of our renewable energy that stands out. The nearly year-round sunshine makes Africa's solar potential particularly unique, perfectly suited to industrial energy demands, something that is challenging in other areas, especially in temperate climates. Kenya, for example, serves as a good example of what is possible. Our national grid currently operates at 3 gigawatts, with 93% of that power being renewable. Our ambition is audacious yet achievable: 100% renewable by 2030 and a 100 gigawatt grid entirely renewable by 2040. A serious challenge in bridging the investment gap in order to enable the continent meet its energy needs is the creation of demand on sufficient scale to provide incentives for appropriate private investment in energy infrastructure development. Industrial energy at scale is therefore necessary to anchor energy demand as a means of tackling the widespread energy poverty still prevalent across our continent. The numbers are stark. Nearly 600 million Africans lack access to electricity. Another 150 million grapple with unreliable power. And almost 1 billion have no access to clean cooking energy. But the abundance of our renewable resources, the possibilities offered by new technologies, and opportunities created by new climate financing offers enormous possibilities for us. We have the capability to provide reliable and cost-effective energy access to all Africans by 2030. The green transformation of both production and consumption is not optional. It is an imperative. The global demand for such solution is already gaining momentum. Our strategic proximity to substantial reserves of metal and minerals necessary for the global energy transition makes Africa an attractive candidate to become a global hub in green industrial supply chain, from refining metals and minerals to constructing and assembling electric motor vehicles, batteries, and other components. Let me invite you to this unprecedented geo-economic opportunity for Africa. We are already key players in the extraction of these minerals, but much of the higher value addition, smelting, refining, assembly, and even the production of electric motor vehicles happens elsewhere. Let's put some numbers to add perspective to what I'm saying. By 2025, The mining of battery critical minerals, nickel, lithium, cobalt, is estimated to generate some $11 billion in value. However, if we take the next step and engage in value-added activities like refining these minerals into industrial-grade metals, that value could quadruple to $50 billion. And if we consider the end-to-end value chain for electric vehicles, including the battery pack and all other components, the market value skyrockets to an astonishing $7 trillion. That is a trajectory. What today we are selling for $11 billion could be $7 trillion if we engage in the right trajectory. And that is what we are saying. And that is what Madam Josefa was saying. What these figures clearly demonstrate is that Africa can no longer afford a minimalist, short-termist, raw material-based approach. The time has come for us to break out of the shackles of low ambition. We must now begin to aim higher and strive for more and better outcomes. As we work towards capturing more economic value from these opportunities, we are not just building a resilient and prosperous continent. We are also contributing to a more balanced and stable global economy. It is the only way, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to stop the migration using rickety boats from one continent to another. It is the way that we are going to stop the negativities. We need to balance our development, and we have the assets to do it, and we have the ambition to do it, and we want to do it together. Trillions of dollars globally are looking for green investment opportunities as the pressure to tackle climate change and crisis heightens. Africa holds the key to accelerating decarbonization of the global economy. It is a statement of fact. Africa holds the key to decarbonizing the global economy, whether it is industrialization, whether it's manufacturing. We are not just a continent rich in resources. We are a powerhouse of untapped potential, eager to engage and fairly compete in the global marketplace. Consider this. Every year, Africa needs to generate approximately 30 million jobs, new jobs for that matter, to accommodate its rapidly expanding workforce. These are not just numbers. They are not just statistics. These are 30 million opportunities to build our future, 30 million dreams that can be fulfilled through climate-proof avenues of growth, and 30 million steps towards shared prosperity. The examples I have shared with you are not mere statistics. They are pragmatic routes for Africa to not only participate in the global economy, but to excel and to grow. I accept that it is one thing to say what is possible, and entirely another to make it happen. For example, infrastructure is expensive. It needs finance and finely tuned policies to attract investors. It needs technical know-how and agile institutions. A major concern that we all know and we all appreciate is cost of capital in Africa, acting as a most prohibitive barrier to our progress. Private investors charge high premiums driven by both real but mostly perceived risks. It is not a secret that we are paying at least 5 times as much as advanced economies to borrow from the financial markets. It's a fact documented. Like many of us, a few years ago, I would have believed the challenges were too great and the barriers too high. Today, I see them differently, as mere tests of our collective will and ingenuity. We should develop effective policies and regulations that catalyze investment and entrepreneurship and unleash the creativity of local business. We must transform Africa's resource wealth from mere potential into real opportunities by directing large-scale investments that will actualize the possibilities that exist and await our citizens in present and in future generations. Let's make no mistake, however, we have no choice but to approach this colossal task with clear minds and open eyes. A lot needs to happen before Africa can live up to its full potential of providing climate solutions for its citizens and to the entire world. Over the next few days, I have no doubt that African leaders seated here and our friends from elsewhere will be open, honest, and direct about what we can commit and bring to the table and the type of the collaborations we need from our global partners. My call to everyone present in this historic summit is for us to work together and converge our efforts on African priorities. I urge everyone to make a contribution to our generation's unprecedented and highly consequential endeavor to catalyze climate action in a spirit of candor, collaboration, and courage. Let us imagine a pathway for different financial structures that can deliver on Africa's goals. Let us commit to invest in viable solutions presented by renewable energy, green industrialization, climate-smart agriculture, and nature conservation. I am confident that we are all inspired by the possibilities before us and galvanized by the demands of this critical time to engage productively, collaborate successfully, and conclude the Africa Summit with a Nairobi Declaration on green growth and climate finance agenda that will commit us to pursue a climate-positive path to propel Africa's economy and promote job creation in a manner that limits our emissions and aids global decarbonization efforts. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends, this summit is a moment to imagine a bold and radically affirmative African future. We are here to envision a continent that links markets and connects resources with demand, unlocking massive economies of scale, a continent that offers an economic backbone for a decarbonized world, a continent that thrives and shapes climate-proof future for all. So, as we immerse ourselves into the array of complex issues during the summit, let us fix our gaze firmly upon the horizon of possibilities. The future is not just something to hope for. Neither is it something to merely wish or wait for. The future is for us to conceptualize and actualize, starting now. That is what we have come to do at the Africa Climate Summit. Welcome to the future, and I thank you.
One more round of applause to all the speakers who have spoken so well. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Now we've come to the end of this session, so mine is just to give you some exit protocols. Very simply, we're going to have what we call a family photo with His Excellency, the President. And so we are inviting the AU leadership and all the ministers, including our cabinet secretaries, to join His Excellency for this photo. So what we'll do is that at the point we're exiting, kindly let's allow His Excellency and the leadership to exit first, followed by the ministers. I'll request that we all remain in the room. Then after that, we will be free to take a short break. But for now, we'll all be upstanding kindly as we allow His Excellency, the President, the AU leadership, and the ministers to proceed to the photo shoot. The photo will be taken at the main entrance to KICC. We do have some protocol officers who are going to guide us on that. So we proceed to the main entrance of KICC, where we have an arrangement for all the ministers together with His Excellency, the President, to take the family photo. Otherwise, have yourselves a wonderful rest of the day.
We are part of the solution. I am part of the solution. We are part of the solution.
Other than the ministers, kindly, the rest of us, let's stay put. We have other sessions coming up, as mentioned by the CS Environment. Madam Secretary.